Welcome to my channel. Subscribe to the channel and listen to my stories every day. The morning started like any other, quiet and routine. I just finished my coffee and was sitting at the kitchen table when I heard my wife's hurried footsteps down the hall. She was dressed, made up, and unusually put together for a grocery run. Her sleek hair, red lipstick, things she normally saved for our nights out, never for errands. But this morning, she seemed nervous, anxious even, as she darted around the house, grabbing her keys and her phone. She barely glanced my way as she rushed toward the door. I thought about saying something, asking if she'd forgotten we had plans to have breakfast together, but I stopped myself. Something in her demeanor, the half-glances and whispered phone calls in the past few weeks, had begun to bother me, and I didn't want to risk saying the wrong thing before I had more than just suspicions. I needed to observe, quietly, and find the right time to understand what was going on. But curiosity got the better of me, and I found myself leaning forward, staring at the coffee table where she'd left her phone. It was unlocked, left there like it was waiting for me to find it. A quick glance wouldn't hurt, right? Just enough to ease my mind. But the moment I picked it up, my heart dropped. I didn't have to dig far. Right there on the screen was a message preview that told me everything. I can't wait to see you again tonight, love. I froze, my grip tightening around the phone as I tried to process what I was reading. It was signed N. I don't remember breathing. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. This wasn't a business message, not even a harmless friend. The language was intimate, too familiar for comfort. My mind raced with questions, every possible scenario flashing through my head. Who was this N? How long had this been going on? And how did I not see this until now? The last few weeks started to make sense, the things I'd brushed off suddenly coming into sharp focus. The mysterious late-night calls, the unexplained absences, the secretive behavior that I'd dismissed as work stress, all these memories crashed over me, and with each one, my heart grew heavier. I placed her phone back on the table, trying to control my trembling hands. I needed to think, to plan. One wrong move, one wrong word, and I might lose my chance to uncover the truth. She came home a couple of hours later, carrying grocery bags and giving me a strained smile. I forced myself to smile back, watching her closely. She looked at me, her gaze flickering with an emotion I couldn't quite place, guilt, maybe? Whatever it was, she looked away quickly, placing the bags on the counter. Hey, honey, she said casually, her voice too light, too cheerful. Hey, I replied, keeping my tone steady. Did you get everything we needed? She nodded, not meeting my gaze. Yeah, just the usual. They had a sale on strawberries, so I grabbed a few pints. Her words faded into the background as I watched her unpack the bags, forcing myself to look calm. But the image of that message kept replaying in my mind, taunting me. I wanted to confront her right then and there, to demand answers, but I knew it was too soon. If I pushed her now, she'd just come up with excuses, deflect, maybe even lie to my face. No, I needed proof. Something undeniable. For the next few days, I was careful. I watched her closely, noting every late text, every unexplained errand, every odd behavior. I started noticing things that had slipped by me before, the way she'd glance at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking, the texts she'd send with her back turned, her laughter a little too forced when we were around friends. She thought she was being discreet, that I was oblivious, but I saw everything. And each time, it felt like another knife twisting in my chest. My patience was running thin. I felt like I was living in a stranger's home, sharing my life with someone I didn't recognize anymore. The woman I loved, the person I trusted more than anyone, had betrayed me. But I kept my silence, knowing that soon, I'd have the chance to expose the truth. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. It was her birthday, and I'd invited a few close friends and family over for a surprise celebration. She was radiant that night, her eyes bright as she mingled with our guests, laughing and smiling as though she didn't have a care in the world. I watched her from across the room, a knot tightening in my stomach. The contrast between the woman she was pretending to be and the woman she truly was made my resolve even stronger. Tonight, she'd be forced to face what she'd done. As the evening wore on, I could feel my pulse quicken, my palms sweaty with anticipation. I rehearsed the words in my head, going over them again and again until they were sharp, precise, designed to cut. Finally, I tapped my glass, signaling for everyone's attention. To my wife, I said, my voice steady as I held her gaze. The woman who has been my rock, my support, my everything. And to the person I've shared my life with, though, as it turns out, I may not know her as well as I thought. A ripple of confusion passed through the room, and I saw her eyes widen, her smile faltering. She tried to laugh, to play it off, but the color drained from her face as I held up her phone, displaying the message for everyone to see. I found this a few days ago, I said, my voice loud enough for everyone to hear. A message from someone who's been keeping her company. Silence fell over the room. Her friends looked away, her family members shifted uncomfortably, but I kept my gaze locked on hers, watching as shock turned to shame. I stood there, the silence in the room growing louder with each passing second. My wife's face was a canvas of shock, her mouth opening as though she wanted to say something, but no words came. The friends and family we'd invited shifted awkwardly, some whispering to each other, others looking at the floor, unwilling to meet my gaze. It was surreal, a scene that felt both deeply personal and entirely public, as if the walls of our private lives had crumbled in an instant. Her mother was the first to speak. She cleared her throat, her voice wavering. "What is he talking about, honey?" She glanced at me, clearly caught off guard, her confusion and worry etched deep in her expression. My wife's hands fidgeted at her sides, her eyes darting between me and her mother. It's nothing, Mom. He's just upset." She forced a smile, though her trembling lips betrayed her. "This isn't what it looks like." I didn't let her finish. I couldn't. "Isn't it?" I said, my voice sharper than I intended. I held up the phone, the message thread from Hen still open, a silent witness to her betrayal. I kept my voice calm, but my words were laced with anger. "Why don't you explain to everyone what this is, then?" Her cheeks flushed a deep red as she looked away, her jaw tightening. It was a small gesture, but I recognized it, the look of someone caught in a lie, cornered with no easy way out. She glanced around the room, her hands clasped together, as though hoping someone would step in, give her an out. But the silence persisted, and she knew, just as I did, that this was her moment to confess. It's not what you think," she mumbled, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then why don't you explain it?" I took a step closer, my grip tightening around her phone. "Why don't you tell everyone about this and you've been seeing behind my back?" Her eyes shot up to meet mine, a flicker of defiance in her gaze, but it quickly faded as the weight of the situation settled on her shoulders. It wasn't like that," she stammered, struggling to find the words. "It wasn't like that?" I echoed, my voice heavy with disbelief. I looked around the room, my gaze meeting the bewildered faces of our friends and family. "She wants us to believe that this isn't what it looks like. That the late nights, the whispered phone calls, the secrets, that somehow, none of it means what we all know it means." Finally, she snapped, her voice shaking with anger and desperation. "Yes, fine. It happened, okay? Are you happy now?" Her words hung in the air, bitter and raw. She took a deep breath, her shoulders slumping. "But it wasn't what you think, it was complicated." "Complicated?" I scoffed, feeling a surge of rage build within me. "How complicated can it be? You lied to me. You lied to all of us." I motioned to our friends, our families, all of whom were watching with a mix of horror and pity. "You've been deceiving everyone, pretending that we're this happy, perfect couple. Meanwhile, you've been sneaking around, living some kind of double life. She shook her head, her voice rising, defensive. I didn't plan for it to happen. You don't know what it's been like, you don't know what it's like to feel so alone in a relationship. I laughed, a hollow sound that echoed through the room. Alone? You felt alone. I've been here every single day, trying to make this work, trying to be the husband you wanted. And you want to tell me you were lonely? I shook my head, disbelief coursing through me. That's just an excuse. A weak, pathetic excuse. A few of our friends shifted uncomfortably, glancing away, unsure of what to do or say. My wife's mother looked pale, her hands clasped tightly as she stared at her daughter, her face a mask of betrayal. Why didn't you just leave? I asked, my voice dropping to a quiet, dangerous tone. Why didn't you just tell me it was over, instead of sneaking around like a coward? She looked away, blinking back tears. I didn't. I didn't want to hurt you. Hurt me? I spat, unable to contain my anger. Well, congratulations. You managed to hurt me more than I ever thought possible. I turned away from her, the weight of the conversation pressing down on me, making it hard to breathe. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, but for the first time, I didn't care. The love I'd felt for her, the trust, the life we'd built together, it was all shattered. Nothing felt real anymore. Her voice trembled as she tried to justify herself. I thought maybe I could fix things. Maybe we could work through it, that you'd never have to know. I turned back to her, fury blazing in my eyes. That I'd never have to know. That's your solution. To live a lie. To keep me in the dark while you continue on with him. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to keep my composure. You've destroyed everything, and for what? A fling. Someone who clearly means more to you than I ever did. She took a step toward me, desperation in her eyes. It wasn't about him, she whispered, her voice cracking. I just needed to feel something, to feel alive again. I felt like I was fading, like I was losing myself, and he made me feel like I mattered. You mattered. I laughed bitterly. You mattered to me. I loved you, and I would have done anything for you. But apparently, that wasn't enough. She looked down, her face streaked with tears. I know I've made mistakes. But please, let's not throw everything away. We can fix this, I promise. I'll do whatever it takes. I looked at her, my heart breaking anew. Do you even hear yourself? How can we fix something you've already destroyed? I shook my head, feeling the last remnants of my patience slip away. This is unforgivable. You've betrayed me, you've humiliated me in front of everyone we know, and now you want me to just forget it? A tense silence filled the room, our friends and family frozen, their eyes darting between us. No one dared to speak, their discomfort palpable. I took a step back, gathering what little strength I had left. I knew, deep down, that there was no going back from this. The love I once felt, the life we'd built, it was over. She had made her choices, and now she'd have to live with the consequences. I turned to our guests, nodding my head slightly. Thank you for coming, I said, my voice hollow. I'm sorry it had to end like this. One by one, they murmured their goodbyes, slipping out of the house, leaving us alone. Finally, it was just the two of us, standing in the wreckage of what had once been our life together. She stepped toward me, her hand reaching out. Please, she whispered, her voice raw and pleading. Please don't do this. I'll change, I swear. I'll be the wife you deserve. I stared at her, feeling nothing but emptiness. You already made your choice, I said softly. And now, I'm making mine. With that, I walked away, leaving her standing in the ruins of her own betrayal. I left the house, needing air, needing space. The walls of the home I'd built with her felt like they were closing in, suffocating me. I couldn't go back there, not yet. Everything inside felt poisoned, tainted by her lies. So I drove, no destination in mind, the roads passing in a blur as my mind raced, turning over every memory, every small moment that had led up to tonight. How had I been so blind? I had missed so many signs, or maybe I just ignored them, trusting her so completely that I didn't want to see. Every time she'd come home late, every text she'd turned her phone away to hide, every subtle way she'd started pulling away, it was all there, and I had chosen not to look. Love, it seemed, had made me a fool. A foolish, trusting man who thought love would be enough to keep us together. I pulled over at a quiet overlook, the city lights twinkling in the distance, so indifferent to my pain. Sitting there in the dark, I wondered if she even understood what she'd done to me, if she even cared. She'd begged, pleaded with me, but her apologies had felt hollow, as if she was more afraid of losing the life we'd built than losing me. The night stretched on, hours slipping by as I sat there, staring into the dark and feeling a cold emptiness settle in my chest. Eventually, exhaustion set in, and I made my way to a small motel just outside the city. Sleep came in short, broken fragments, my dreams twisted with images of her laughing, her phone lighting up with messages I'd never seen, her face turning to someone else. By the time morning came, I felt as empty as I had the night before. When I returned to the house, it was early, the sun barely rising, casting a muted glow over the neighborhood. I walked through the door and found her in the living room, sitting on the couch, her face puffy from crying. She looked up as I entered, hope flickering in her eyes. Are you here to talk?" she asked, her voice trembling. I looked at her, my heart heavy. "I'm here to gather my things. I need some space to think." Her face fell, but she nodded, standing to give me room. "Please, just, let me explain," she began, her voice pleading. "Let me tell you everything. I owe you that much." I didn't want to hear it, not really, but a part of me needed closure. I needed to know why she'd thrown everything away, why she'd turned to someone else when I'd given her everything I had. So I sat, keeping a safe distance, and nodded. "Go ahead." She took a deep breath, running her hands through her hair, struggling to find the words. "It started about 6 months ago," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't plan for it to happen. I was just feeling so lost. You were so busy with work, and I felt like we were growing apart." "Growing apart?" I repeated, incredulous. "You never said anything. You just did this behind my back." She looked down, shame etched into her face. I know I should have talked to you. I didn't know how. And then, I met Nick, he's the one you saw in the messages. He listened to me, he made me feel like I mattered. It was stupid, it was selfish, but in those moments, I felt alive again." "Alive?" I said, my voice rising with anger. "And what about me? What about the life we'd built together? Did that mean nothing to you?" Her eyes filled with tears, and she wiped them away, shaking her head. "It did. It does. I was just weak. I made a mistake, and I'm so sorry." A mistake. A simple word for the devastation she'd caused. I shook my head, struggling to contain my anger. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary, or missing a date. This is betrayal. This is breaking every promise we made to each other. She winced, nodding as fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "I know. And I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't want to lose you. Please, let me make it right. I'll do whatever it takes." I stared at her, the woman I'd once loved more than anything, and felt nothing but a hollow emptiness. I wanted to forgive her, to let this all be some horrible mistake that we could fix, but deep down, I knew things would never be the same. The trust was gone, shattered beyond repair, and no amount of apologies or promises could change that. I need time, I said finally, my voice quiet. I need time to figure out if there's anything left worth saving. She nodded, looking defeated, her shoulders slumping as the reality of what she'd done settled over her. Take all the time you need, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I'll be here, waiting, hoping that you'll come back. I couldn't look at her anymore. I turned and went upstairs, grabbing a few things, clothes, my toothbrush, the essentials. Each item I packed felt like another step away from the life I'd known, the life I thought was safe, secure. By the time I left the house, it felt like I was leaving a stranger behind. The days passed slowly, each one bleeding into the next. I rented a small apartment on the other side of town, just enough space for me to figure out my next steps. My life felt hollow, stripped of purpose, every familiar thing tainted by her betrayal. Friends called, some offered support, others asked questions, but I wasn't ready to talk. I wasn't ready to make sense of the wreckage. My days became a routine of work and solitude, my mind racing with memories that felt more like betrayals now than happy moments. I'd fall asleep replaying our life together, analyzing every word, every glance, wondering how much of it had been real and how much had been lies. Each night, I'd drift off with a new piece of the puzzle, each morning bringing the same empty ache. About a week later, I received a text from her. I know you need space, but I just wanted to check in. I miss you. I stared at the words, a dull anger simmering beneath the surface. She missed me. After everything she'd done, she had the nerve to say she missed me. I tossed my phone aside, not bothering to respond. It felt like too little, too late. But as much as I wanted to hate her, to cut her out completely, I couldn't shake the memories, the life we'd shared. For years, she had been my closest confidant, my partner, my best friend. And now, all of that was gone, replaced by a cold, aching emptiness. It was like mourning someone who was still alive, a grief that had no resolution. One evening, as I sat alone in my apartment, I received a call from her. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the decline button, but something made me answer. Hello. Hi, she said, her voice small and hesitant. I needed to hear your voice. I stayed silent, unsure of what to say, the anger and hurt still raw. She waited, then spoke again, her words spilling out in a rush. I know I have no right to ask, but, could we talk? Just, one more time. I just need you to understand how sorry I am. Please. I wanted to say no, to shut her out completely, but a part of me, a foolish, hopeful part, wanted answers. So I agreed, setting up a time to meet at a small cafe the next day. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, closure, maybe, or some explanation that could ease the pain, even if just a little. The next day, I arrived early, sitting at a corner table and watching the door as I sipped my coffee. When she walked in, she looked different, thinner, tired, her eyes hollow. She saw me and managed a small, tentative smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. She sat down, her hands fidgeting as she looked down, avoiding my gaze. After a moment, she spoke. Thank you for meeting me. I know I don't deserve it. I shrugged, feeling the familiar anger simmering beneath the surface. I'm not here for you. I'm here for me. She nodded, taking a deep breath. I know. I wanted you to know that I'm ending things with him. I haven't seen him since you found out. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. So that makes it better. No, she said, her voice breaking. Nothing can make it better. I know that. I'm trying. I want you to know that I'm trying. I looked at her, seeing the woman I'd once loved so deeply and wondering if there was anything left of her that I could trust. Trying isn't enough, I said, my voice cold. You broke something in me that I don't think I can fix. I don't think you can fix it either. Her eyes filled with tears, and she reached across the table, her hand trembling as she placed it on mine. Please, just, don't give up on us. I'll do whatever it takes. I pulled my hand away, the weight of her touch feeling wrong, foreign. You already gave up on us, I said quietly. You just didn't tell me until it was too late. Her shoulders sagged, the fight leaving her as she realized the finality of my words. There was nothing left to say, no more excuses or apologies that could undo the damage. We sat there in silence, two strangers bound by the ghost of what once was, both of us knowing that this was the end. Eventually, I stood, giving her one last look, a silent goodbye to the life we'd lost. Then, without another word, I walked out of the cafe, leaving her behind, along with everything we had ever shared. After that day at the cafe, I thought I could finally begin to move on. I threw myself into work, into exercise, into anything that might distract me from the hollow ache that her betrayal had left behind. For weeks, I kept up a routine, pushing myself to exhaustion each day just to fall into bed and sleep without thinking of her. But every so often, I'd get a message from her. Sometimes, it was just a, thinking of you, or, hope you're doing okay. Other times, she would pour her heart out, begging for forgiveness, offering apologies that somehow felt too late. I rarely responded, but I couldn't bring myself to block her either. As much as I wanted to cut her out completely, some part of me, maybe the part that still remembered our better days, kept the door open, if only just a crack. One day, after ignoring yet another message from her, I decided I needed a change of scenery. The apartment felt too small, too empty, and I needed something to break the routine that was slowly suffocating me. I packed a bag and drove out to the cabin by the lake where we used to spend summer weekends. It was remote, quiet, a place where I could be alone with my thoughts without the distractions of the city. The drive took hours, winding roads and dense woods stretching out as I left the city behind. When I finally arrived, I felt a strange sense of peace. The cabin looked the same, the lake still as calm as I remembered, the air crisp with the scent of pine and water. I spent the first few days in solitude, hiking the familiar trails, letting the fresh air fill my lungs, trying to clear my mind. One night, after a long hike, I sat by the fire, the silence around me comforting yet haunting. I poured a drink, nursing it slowly as I watched the flames flicker, memories of her drifting back unbidden. This was her favorite place. She had loved the lake, the quiet, the way the world felt slower here. The memories stung, but for once, they didn't feel overwhelming. I was beginning to accept that our life together was over, that I had to let go. And then, as if fate had other plans, my phone buzzed. Her name lit up the screen, and despite my better judgment, I answered. Hello. I said, my voice coming out rough. There was silence on the other end, and then her voice, soft and hesitant. Hi. I wasn't sure you'd answer. I almost didn't, I replied, my tone more bitter than I'd intended. She hesitated, and I could hear her take a shaky breath. I needed to hear your voice. I know I have no right, but I can't seem to. I can't seem to let go. I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar ache return. You should, I said quietly. It's over. We both know that. I know, she whispered, her voice breaking. But I can't stop thinking about you. About what I did. Every day, I wake up with this emptiness. I keep trying to move on, but nothing works. I don't know who I am anymore without you. I sighed, the anger I'd once felt replaced with a dull, weary sadness. You made your choice. You chose someone else, even when you had everything with me. I don't know how to forgive that. She was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with tears. I understand. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know that. But I just needed you to know that I'll always regret what I did. That I wish I could take it back. There was a finality to her words that hit me in a way I hadn't expected. It was as if she was saying goodbye, a real goodbye, and for the first time, I felt the weight of what we'd lost settle over me in full. The life we'd built, the dreams we'd shared, all of it was gone, nothing more than memories now. Goodbye, then, I said softly, the words catching in my throat. She didn't respond, and after a moment, the line went dead. I sat there in the quiet, staring at the phone, feeling a strange sense of relief mixed with sorrow. Maybe now, we could both finally let go. The next morning, I decided to drive back to the city. The cabin, once a sanctuary, now felt like a relic of a life that no longer existed. The drive back was quiet, the scenery blurring past as my mind wandered, lost in thoughts of her. When I finally reached the city, my phone buzzed with a message. It was from her number, but the message was strange, written by someone else. This is Detective Harris. We need to inform you that your wife was involved in a serious accident early this morning. She was found with severe injuries. We are doing everything we can. Please call us immediately. A chill ran down my spine, my hands gripping the wheel tightly. I pulled over, my heart racing as I dialed the number in the message. A police officer answered, his voice calm and steady, but the words that followed shattered everything I'd been holding on to. She was found early this morning on the bridge by the lake, he explained. It looks like she lost control of the car, veered off the road, and hit the guardrail. She was unconscious when we arrived. We believe she may have been heading in your direction. My mind went blank as his words sank in. She had been coming to the cabin, coming to see me one last time. Guilt, anger, regret, all of it crashed over me, leaving me breathless. I'd told her goodbye, not realizing it would be the last time. Hours later, I found myself in the hospital, sitting by her bedside, the harsh, sterile lights casting shadows over her face. She looked so fragile, her skin pale against the white sheets, tubes and wires hooked up to her as the machines around us beeped steadily. I reached out, my hand trembling as I took hers, feeling the coldness of her skin seep into me. The doctors had said her injuries were extensive, that there was a chance she wouldn't wake up. I sat there, memories of our life together flashing before me, each one a painful reminder of what I'd lost. And now, as she lay there, silent and still, I realized that even though she'd betrayed me, even though she'd broken my heart, some part of me would always love her. The hours passed in silence, the steady beep of the machines the only sound in the room. I stayed with her through the night, holding her hand, whispering words I knew she'd never hear. Apologies, forgiveness, regrets, things I should have said sooner, things I could only say now when it was too late. As dawn broke, her breathing grew fainter, the machines slowing, the sound softening to a quiet hum. I felt the weight of finality settle over me, a crushing sorrow that left me hollow. In her final moments, I leaned close, my voice breaking as I whispered, I forgive you. I forgive you for everything. I wish I could have told you that sooner. And then, in the soft light of morning, she slipped away, leaving me alone in a silence deeper than any I had ever known. I stayed there, holding her hand, feeling the warmth fade, knowing that I'd lost her for good. There would be no more messages, no more late-night calls, no more second chances. As I walked out of the hospital, the weight of her absence pressed down on me, heavier than I'd ever felt before. I had loved her, hated her, forgiven her, and now she was gone, a ghost haunting the empty spaces of my life. The city was quiet, the streets empty, and I felt as though I were the last person left in the world. The years ahead stretched out before me, a vast, lonely expanse, each day a reminder of the life we'd lost. And as I walked into the fading light of the morning, I knew that some part of me would always be waiting for her, even if I had to wait forever.